Good morning. Welcome to Everyday Courage. I'm David Millstone and
I'm Stephan Dweck.
awesome. And we're here today with Alex Kuhn, or Alex. You go by Alexander or Alex?
I go by Alex.
You go by Alex.
So,
Yeah.
Hey, um, Alex actually knows what he's doing. Stefan and I, we're
I
too
wouldn't
old.
go that far.
We're two old guys giving this a crack, but Alex actually does this for a living. Before we get into the meat of this, Alex, what can you tell us a bit about your podcast and your life as a sportscaster?
Yeah, so I work at 670 The Score, a radio station in Chicago, and I am a producer. And I was a host before this at 1600 ESPN in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I have been in commercial radio for about 10 plus years now at this point, and mostly on the sports side, but as I know we're going to get into this, but
Right.
as the world has gone the way that it has gone, sports and politics and culture have all kind of intersected, and they've always been that way, but it's gone to an extreme degree at this point. Yeah, that's my career, and I do have a podcast on the side called We Need to Talk.
Oh,
You can find it on YouTube, and you can find it on TikTok as well. And I just started that here within the last couple of months and still expanding at this point. But the title is pretty simple because right now, a lot of sports talk, but there are some things that I want to get into along the way as well.
yeah.
So are you behind the scenes or on air?
So a little bit of both. As right now, I'm filling in as the interim executive producer on our drive time show, Spiegel and Holmes. And I do a lot of behind the scenes work, but I pitch in on air as well when needed. And I also had been doing sports updates for our news station, WBBM News Radio, here in Chicago, which apparently #1 rated station in the city, the #1 grossing income station in the country, apparently. And I got to work there a little bit. That was actually my first job in Chicago, was working behind the scenes on the board for Bears games. And in my time, I've worked Bears games, Bulls games, Cubs games, and gotten some time on the air. So right now, lots of behind the scenes stuff, and at when needed on the air.
Okay, so Alex, oh, sorry, you, Stefan.
No, the reason I ask, I had one of the first, might have been the first, sports talk show in the nation on
Wow.
WFAN, The Fan. You
I've
familiar
heard
with
of
The
it.
Fan?
The outside of the score, I'd say the Fan, BYP in Philadelphia.
Right,
Those are the three big brands
right.
in the country. Yes.
Yeah, so Millstone, you might know this, but The Fan is the biggest, or was the biggest sports talk show station in New York City. And I had a show called Sports Funk. Chernoff was, I think, the program manager, but I was on with Mad Dog and Francesca, what's the French, whatever his name is,
Mike
Sid
Francesca.
Rosenberg, Sid Rosen, all those guys. And I used to write sports for Imus in the Morning, which David knows
I
about.
do know about that. Yeah.
So I'm a little familiar with it. But yeah, we had our own show on The Fan till our buddy passed away.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
that ended. So that was our short career in sports talk radio. So, but I'm excited to talk to you because it's an area that we had a toe in for a moment.
So one thing that confuses me, Alex, is that you just described a 10-plus year career in sports radio. As far as I'm concerned, you're 10 minutes old. So for full disclosure here, Alex is we figured this out this morning. He is my first cousin once removed. Alex, man, you're the son of one of my favorite people in the world. Your dad, Tom Kuhn, who is my first cousin, and who ran, I guess CEO, was CEO his title?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, at Millstone Weber Construction Company in St. Louis. And before it was Millstone Weber, it was Millstone. Well, I don't know. It was Millstone Banger.
Banger, yes.
For the most of the time. I think it was Millstone very in the early days. But anyway, It's a big construction company in St. Louis. They built Busch Stadium, the first Busch Stadium, built Lambert Field, the airport, built a lot of the highways around St. Louis. And so Alex is the son of a man who has done a lot of lot of really solid, just literally foundational work in St. Louis, along with my brother, by the way. My cousin and brother ran a company together for a few years, and he's a construction company. And that's a construction company in the Midwest. This is a conservative milieu. And Tom is not a conservative guy. Tom is a pretty outspoken liberal. I think he's a click or two to the left of me in some ways. And he's so. Alex, before we get into you, can you tell us just a tiny bit about the ways Tom has to go to your, we asked you what you thought courage is, and you said, speaking truth even when it's inconvenient. How's your dad done that?
Every day. It's growing up in a place where I'll put it pretty bluntly. St. Louis is a place that you feel class tensions, you feel racial tensions every day. It's black and it's white. Wow. A little bit of background here. The city of St. Louis is its own county, and there's what's called the St. Louis County, which is the suburbs, and they're split among funding, among taxes, among how much money the schools get. So there's a clear divide when it comes to the city and the county. And for years, my dad has been really at the forefront of trying to bring inclusion to the construction industry, which is a tough thing to do in general, and especially a tough thing to do in a city like St. Louis. And I'm not just picking on St. Louis. We have these issues everywhere, but I feel like they're in a town in the state of Missouri where you have those clear divides. Over the years, he's realized that you've got to be proactive in bringing people together of all different backgrounds. And that's what I've learned from a very young age, and just understanding where people come from. That has really been at the forefront of everything that I've tried to be as a sports broadcaster. Of we get into topics where we treat these athletes like commodities, which I mean is how they're treated by their league a lot of times. But I had a brother who played sports. I had a couple other brothers who lived with me over the years that played football, and just to understand their stories, where they come from, where a lot of their teammates come from, and their struggle day to day to perform at the highest level. Some of them coming to college they're the first people in their family to ever go to college. Just the human aspect of everything is what he taught me from a young age, and what I've carried with me the entire way.
This is a question I've stumbled into that I think we're going to ask everybody because it's interesting. All right, you'll see why. When I told you about this podcast, I told you what the title was, Everyday Courage. What did you think it would be about?
I thought that it would be about people who are trying to find a good way forward in this world right now, when everything looks so bleak, and a lot of times speaking the truth and speaking the truth is frowned upon. It's not profitable. It's not popular. It's not something that gets you fame or sometimes it literally can get you in trouble in this current political climate. So to me, it felt like, as I said, a podcast of people. As I've learned over these last several months, there's a huge market out there. There's a lot of people. There's millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people in this country, in this world, that see the damage that is going on right now and are saying, we cannot let this stand. We cannot move forward for the sake of our lives, our children, our children's children. We've got to take a stand right now.
Well, because I had another question. Besides you wearing a Bears shirt, you should be wearing a New York Knicks shirt, considering wearing the
Don't hold that against me.
Eastern Conference Finals. But Millstone talked about speaking truth when it's inconvenient, right, David?
Well, that was Kuhn. That was Alex. I'm sorry, Alex should speak to that a little bit.
Okay, but the point I'm making, let's kind of interweave that with sports. So let me hear your thoughts about athletes who speak truth when it's inconvenient. Taking a stance against Trump, not going to the White House. LeBron speaking out against Trump. Curry not going to the White House. You got a lot of examples of sports figures who are making political statements. And then you have, I think we were in college at the same time. I think Laura Ingraham, who has spoken out and said athletes should just shut up and dribble,
Mm-hmm.
and they should not say anything. What are your thoughts about that? Because that takes courage. And these athletes are paid millions of dollars, and I'm sure a lot of those owners are conservative. Not all of them, but probably a portion.
A good amount.
Yeah, but they're speaking truth and jeopardizing. I mean, they're not like Bill Russell or Kareem or Jim Brown, but they are taking their own position. But let me hear your thoughts.
To me, the people that really need to build the foundation for a resistance against Trump and his horrific policies, and we've got to stick to that. The horrific policies. It's not the mean tweets. I am very critical of, at times, our side and how we frame, or at least people that I agree with politically, and how we frame things. It's gotten to the point where a large portion of the public thinks, oh, it's just the mean tweets that are the issue. No. It is 100% the policies that are the issue. And when you have athletes that are out there speaking and jeopardizing their fame, their endorsements, or sometimes they're risking fines. That's a courageous thing. You've got to look to those people that are willing to do that, because our country is very late to recognize courage. Whether it's go ahead.
So tell me, I mean, we're talking about the athletes who are taking these
Yeah.
risks tonight. But what about you? You seem to actually be taking some risks yourself with your own career.
Well, I feel comfortable in what I do because my stance is, if you want to listen to me, if you want to hear my opinion on things, great. But it is not my responsibility to care about your opinion of my opinion. And so for me, yeah, I understand over the years, like when I've worked in different places. I worked in small town Oregon, and I've worked in Iowa, and now I'm working in Chicago. There's going to be disagreements, and disagreements are totally fine. But it's the disagreements between people where you feel like, okay, I'm here on planet Earth, and they're coming from a place of non-reality, right? They're saying something that is totally untrue, and they're not willing to budge on that. It's not my responsibility to be like, okay, no, I need to reach my hand out to somebody who's telling me that, for example, the earth is flat or something like that. So,
well, let's think about somebody else for a moment. Well, let's think about the person who actually is somewhat appalled in the same way that all three of us here are, but feels timid or feels shy, feels afraid. So, I've admitted when I started this podcast because right after the election, I felt like I needed to do something. But I also, I don't wear a Star of David partly because I don't want to get punched. Partly I've got other reasons. And also it's like, oh my God, if I start speaking up, am I going to risk my career as an actor? Are my assets going to be put at risk? So I'm really tempted just to shut up, lay low. How do we speak to folks who felt the way I was feeling?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've had those thoughts. I think we all have. I think we all have had that wonder of like, are we putting ourselves at risk by speaking up? But we have to think about all the people that came before us. We've got to think about all the activists during the civil rights movement who risked everything, their lives, their freedoms, everything, when they were told similar thing. Oh, just be quiet, just lay low, don't say anything. We agree with your message, but it's the way that you do it that makes us not agree with you. We've got to understand that the only way to stand up to the bully is sometimes figuratively to fight back. And
I'm sorry.
No, there are examples. That's why I said there are sports examples that are even more current. That is in his world. All right. Besides Kaepernick, you want to talk about courage and the blackballing of Kaepernick? You could speak to that.
Yep.
What about who? Didn't the black coaches get together and file a lawsuit against the NFL a couple years ago?
Brian Flores did. Yep.
Okay, right. And Also, even in the last month, didn't Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, refuse to go to the White House, right?
Correct.
So let me hear your thoughts about that. Those are small, some of them not small, but those are, in a way, an example of activism and
Yeah.
courage.
Yeah. Those are, as I said earlier, those are, I think on the surface you can say small things, but in the larger scope of what we're talking about, those are huge things. And those are things that we've got to, it's so hard nowadays, because we get bogged down 24/7 with negativity, with thinking that with him winning, with Donald Trump winning the White House, and the wave of support behind him, not necessarily from voters, but from the people, from Congress, from the entire Republican Party, of aiding and abetting this madness, right? Like, we see it 24/7, but we've got to pay attention to the people out there that are doing exactly what you are mentioning right
All
now.
right, I want to pull our attention back to. I really appreciate that both you guys really know the sports world that I'm not familiar with. I super appreciate this conversation. I want to pull us back though to question I have though, and that is okay, Alex and myself and Stephan. You know what? All three of us are super fortunate to have been raised by parents and grown up in families in which courage is almost second nature. Stephan, I forget, was your mom an activist or was it your dad? I forget, it was your mom?
My mother and my father, but my mother.
So your folks were activists, and the Millstone Kuhn clan is nothing if not outspoken. And we really, well, do want to get to this, Alex, at some point, and kind of a more personal flavor in a bit. But we are very outspoken about the world, so we were raised, all three of us were raised with expectation that we would speak out and the assumption that we can. So how do we empathize more with folks who are not raised that way, who are told to be more polite?
Yeah, I understand it. Like, as I said, I think that there are certain people that you're not going to be able to reach, but there are plenty that I think that we can reach. And you do that by letting people know that you do have a voice and you can use it. And that's really that's all we've got, right? At the end of the day. And you make sure that people understand the direness of the situation, but you can't let that you can't be 24/7 talking about just how awful everything is, because at that point you demoralize people. Right. And I think at times that's a trap that unfortunately the Democratic Party found out the hard way in 2 elections, where it's 24/7 like, this guy's horrific. He's comparing him to the worst people, and I agree with you. Like, don't get me wrong, I see what he's doing right now, and I 100% agree with you. But eventually, and I thought Tim Walz did a very good job of this at times when he was out in the forefront of not over giving evil too much power, and realizing that, yeah, like, there are risks with speaking out, but the risk of not speaking out is a hell of a lot worse than the risk of speaking out. And
now, so one thing that is interesting to me here too is, you and I, we spoke briefly. You and I are just getting to know each other. Actually, right. In our lives, we've not really hung out. Cousins don't always spend a lot of time together, so I'm just getting to know you.
Live in different parts of the country, yeah.
All that jazz.
He's been fortunate. Good.
right. Alex has been lucky. You're right. I copped to that. We were at your dad's retirement party recently. Uh-huh. You and I briefly kind of, touched on the frustrations that I think you and I may both feel sometimes with the reticence within not just our family, most families, to talk openly and heartfully about issues inside the family. Being able to be open with one another. And it strikes me that, Yeah, we can be reticent and not courageous in one area of our life and then courageous in another area in our life. But we can also perhaps think that because we're not courageous in one area of our life, we can't be in another. What's your experience I don't want to get, overly personal. I don't want to get TMI, but, what is your experience with sort of the emotional courage in the family?
So my dad is somebody that over the years has been, as I said, someone that unites people, and he is like over the years he talks about being a 20 something that was always upset, always angry, and he's become a very positive person over the years. And sometimes overly positive. My mom also very positive, but has never been somebody that is concerned about or has been worried about telling you how they feel. And I think that just it's a thing right now where I feel some level of responsibility, and sometimes it feels like too much of responsibility, and I've got to dial it back for myself of trying to make sure that we are all in contact and we are all okay. And I sometimes communicate too much, and that's the trick right now, because my family is the most important thing to me in the world, and I I feel horrible for every single person that is having to live through what they're living through. And for me, I have friends right now who just had newborn kids, and I have a younger brother, who just had a newborn in November. And to think about like just to think about the world that they are going to live in is motivation enough for me to speak out and to be courageous. But at the same time, like, it's this balance of, you can't let all of the chaos get between you and the people that you love the most. And sometimes you got, like, there's clearly a generational divide when it comes to communication, and especially when it comes to men of a certain vintage. Like, it's tough sometimes for especially men to communicate their feelings, especially men of a certain age, and that's something.
So what's the generational divide there? Are you finding the older guys are more reticent, or they're more voluble?
Reticent, I would say.
They are.
Yeah. That's at least my experience. Just being able to, it's a trick to be, or it's just being able to communicate and share how you're feeling, what you're experiencing, without it bringing everybody down.
So
taking the small victories when
so
they're there.
Is some of that reticence, perhaps, this is a possible idea, not necessarily, say, lack of courage or forthrightness, but is it possibly having learned to listen? Is maybe, listening, actually being able, sometimes shutting up, not speaking up so quickly, and actually taking a moment just to listen, as important. Steph.
No. So how do people get more courage? We gave examples earlier, famous people putting it on the line. Is that an example? How do the three of us and other people get more courage?
Yeah, well,
Alex, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I think admitting that things are not always great, admitting that it's okay to ask for help. Like, I'll admit it right now, I have been talking to a therapist for well over a year, and I think that I wish that everybody who wanted to could do it. I don't think it's because I am an overly depressed person. I don't think that I have any sort of clinical disposition when it comes to depression, but I think that it is that talk saves lives. And along that same note, something that my therapist did tell me is that, getting back to what I was talking about earlier, is you've got to look for the other examples of people who are being courageous, and we've got to support them 110%. Like, for example, you mentioned all those people in sports. I'll use the one in politics, Chris Van Hollen, right? The senator from Maryland who risked his life by going and checking in on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was abducted and sent to CCOT in El Salvador, absolutely risked his life to go check on that individual who was illegally, I'm not deported, abducted by our government, right? Like,
Right.
we have got to support those people who are not just doing things for their own political career. Like, I feel like right now, intentions of people, especially people in the public light, have never been clear. And we've got to use those examples of the people doing good, and we've got to amplify them, because what we're going against is a right-wing media machine that is very powerful, that has a lot of resources, and is constantly going to be tearing those people down. And we've got to prop them up. We've got to show them off as the examples of how to fight back against, quite honestly, tyranny.
There's got to be a certain recognizing of the truth to have courage
Mm-hmm.
of what's really going on, right? But there's so many Kool-Aid drinkers out there who have been basically bamboozled by this guy. I don't know if we'll have courage on a mass level, David. I just don't know. It's people don't want to look at the facts.
Well, you ain't wrong, But Alex is, saying that when I asked him what courage was, he said speaking truth even when it's inconvenient. Reminds me again of Václav Havel, who talked of living in truth. Sometime, the greatest act of resistance you can make to any oppression is truthfully, despite despite the lies that are going on around you.
But David, for looking at that in our society, a lot of people want to speak the truth, but they won't for financial reasons. They won't. I mean,
Yeah.
That's that. Is it the Japanese saying, the spike that speaks out gets hit back down? There's some phrase like that, but people won't speak out because they're afraid of losing their their situation.
One thing that I have noticed, especially like with my podcast, and if for some reason you don't get to pick the medium that works the best for you, but I have found, whether it's on YouTube and especially on TikTok, like I had never had any experience before with the platform. And then I go on there and realize that there is a huge market out there for the truth. And it shocked me, right? Like going on, you hear about TikTok and you think, oh, this is a place where Gen Zers go to do their stupid dances or whatever, right? But there's a sports journalist that I follow, and his name is Jeff Pearlman. And over the years, Jeff Pearlman has broken many stories. I remember he broke the John Rocker, the former...
I know who that is.
Yeah.
He was Atlanta Brave.
Former Atlanta Brave who had said some very racist things. He broke that story. And he's written books about Brett Favre, and he's just your run-of-the-mill sports journalist, right? And on TikTok, he goes on there and he tells a sports story every single day that some of them have to do with sports and culture. Some of them have to do with his time in the business. And he just tells a simple story every day, right? And he has millions and millions of followers and people on there who are looking for the truth. Because unfortunately right now, when you tune in to cable news, you're going to get lots of conflict. You're going to get lots of both sidesing. And, this person says this, and this person says this, and the truth must be totally in the middle. Like, no matter how big of a lie that one side is promoting, that's kind of what you're going to get. Like, when you see people showing up at rallies, 36,000 people showing up at rallies for AOC and Bernie on a non-election year, we've got to be able to trust and believe that there are plenty of people, millions and hundreds of millions of people out there that are dying for the truth.
Hold up. The people who have the courage, and that's the theme, the courage to state their truth, right? You're saying there's a big audience who will be receptive to that truth. And it makes me think about if I'm a professional athlete, because we're talking about your wheelhouse, and I kneel during the national anthem. That's my truth. Discrimination. And then I get fired.
Yeah, we're going to be talking. One of our guests is going to be in a few weeks. Is going to be Bob Inglis. He's a former GOP congressperson who actually began his career, scoffing at climate change, and wound up after a conversation with his son, really seeing is really understanding that we need to fight climate change. And
Yeah.
he took a pro environmentalist stand and got creamed in
Yeah.
the polls. He lost.
It is a good example.
Yeah, great.
I mean, that's the idiocy of that. I mean,
Yeah.
that there's no climate change.
Yeah, and that's kind of my entire point, right? Like when you lose your job for something like that, thinking about I was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa when the whole Colin Kaepernick kneeling discourse was taking place. And that was the first time I was really introduced to the vitriolic nature of the discourse in sports and our surrounding politics, where it's like, why is everybody so upset right now with the stand with him speaking his truth and him never getting a job again is just totally unbelievable. Like I was talking to one of my friends last night who works in national radio, and it got to the point where it's like, okay, just be honest with me. Are you you're going to tell me he's not in the league because he's not good enough to be in the league? Nobody believes that, right? Like that's not something that anybody who follows the sport closely believes. So to me, it's getting back to standing on our foundational morals of, like Colin Kaepernick is standing up for a cause in police brutality that needs to be addressed. Climate change needs to be addressed. All of these things need to be addressed. And if you're going to fire me for saying that, I guess so be it. Like
I think this is a great place to wrap up the conversation for now. Mostly because we're doing 45-minute episodes, which I'm realizing we're going to have, when season 2, we're going to have to lengthen these shows. The 45 minutes is not enough. But I would love to, wrap up now. And with a couple things I'd like to do in the wrap up. One is answer a listener question, and we actually have one this week, which is freaking awesome, from J.G. Kelly.
We have a listener?
We have yes, we have a listener. So this is his question. What is one moment in your life when choosing courage over comfort fundamentally changed your perspective or path? And what did you learn from that experience? I think it's a great question.
That is a good one. The one thing, there's a moment, I'm not going to get into like the who it was with or anything like that. I want to protect their identity. But to me, having tough conversations with people who are above you, who are in, like, whether it's a boss or whether it's somebody who is, like, for example, I'm a producer, if it's a host, right? Being able to have tough conversations and tell them that you disagree with something, right? Like, you don't have to be there to affirm everything that everybody says. In fact, disagreeing is how we get to the right answer. And once that first time that it happened early on in my career, where I disagreed with something that a boss said in my first job, and saying, I don't quite agree with that, or this is how I feel about it, and getting into a little bit of a disagreement back and forth, and eventually coming to an understanding that this is coming from a place of wanting to do my best, and you are coming from the same thing. Like, you want to make this product the best that it can. It made me realize that that's okay. Like, disagreement is okay as long as both parties are disagreeing in good faith and are actually trying to get to the right answer.
Yeah, so yes, disagreement's okay as long as both parties are acting in good faith. I think that's a really great note to leave this on. I do want to do a quick lightning round, kind of rose and thorns from the week. When in the last week did each of us fail to be courageous, and when did each of us actually succeed? I'll go first because I want to. I did a bicycle race this last Sunday, first one I've done in like 30, 40 years. I'm that old. And it was long and it was really hard. And part of my courage there was actually doing the race. But even more importantly for me was actually accepting that I'm an old guy now and I'm going to be slow and that's okay. That just doing the race was an achievement. My thorn for the week is I have an old friend who kind of has by whom I have felt hurt over the years, because in conversation she makes little jokes about how I grew up with some money because our family is not, is fairly affluent. And I was always hurt. I was like, don't you know me better? Don't you know that I know that? Don't you know that I feel tremendous responsibility and even shame? But my thorn there is that I have ghosted her. I've not been willing to have the confrontational conversation with her that it's going to take to clean that up and save our friendship. Stephan, what about yourself?
I got to come up with something every week. I don't know.
That's all right.
I mean, I ran 9 miles in 90-degree weather. And that last mile, I'm trying to think. I didn't want to go to a charity function this weekend that I went to. It turned out to be actually pretty good. Probably selfish reasons, lazy reasons, but I got up the courage, I guess, to go and get comfortable in your bubble. Sometimes I just like to watch sports and read and harass Millstone on the weekends, and that's it. But so that took. But a thorn. There was an opportunity for a client of mine to take a photo with a very famous. It went viral, and they didn't do it, and I was pissed off about it. And again, I had to stay silent because it wasn't my decision, and I could have said something, but it went nowhere. I mean, again, I have to. It's almost a callback to what we said earlier. There are certain things lines I can't cross, even though I want to cross them and probably should cross them. And they're not, very. They're just not popular, so I keep it to myself.
Yeah, man, I hear you. So, what about you, Alex?
As far as the courage goes, I got to cover my first Cubs baseball game on Friday.
All right.
So I got my credential from my boss, and my boss is like, "Hey, so we do our show. We have the Cubs on our station, so if they have a 1:20 game goes till about 4:45, and our show goes till 6. So we'll start like 4:45 and do a short show until 6 o'clock." And my boss is like, "Hey, do you want to go out to Wrigley and produce the show?" I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And so he's like, "Yeah, get there in like the 5th or 6th inning." And there's a lot of people up there. I got there at 10 a.m. for a 1 o'clock game. and just I went down to the field level, had access, and just introduced myself to every single person that I could. And at the lunchroom, I'm sitting in the press box, and I sat next to this lady and started chatting her up. I sat down and I was like, "Hey, can I sit here?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." So chat her up. This lady's name is Cheryl Ray Stout, and she's been a sports reporter in Chicago for 42 years. Mm-hmm. I believe the first woman ever in an NFL locker room.
Oh, man.
And she talked about the struggle of her peers at that time and all the stuff that she has witnessed in those 42 years, from Michael Jordan's return to the home run chase of Sammy Sosa and all the history of the Bears. And it was inspiring to hear her courage and the fact that she's still in this business over the years. And the courage on my part was sort of introducing myself, getting myself out of my comfort zone and making those connections with people in the business. And the thorn, I have to do a better job even when I feel like I'm very busy. And right now I'm the interim executive producer, and I'm trying to get that full-time position, and sometimes I feel like I'm laser focused. I've just got to stay in touch with everybody in my orbit and check in on them and make sure that I'm not missing texts and because sometimes that slips through the cracks. I'm like, "Oh God, I forgot to get back to this person, and that's not an excuse, and I can't make it an excuse, and that's my thorn this week, and I hope that it's not going to continue to be, but I've really got to work on that.
Well, man, thanks so much for being here, dude. And I'm really
Yeah,
Thanks,
of course.
Alex.
yeah, I'm really
Thanks,
hoping
guys.
I hope to get to see more of you, by the way.
Anytime.
Maybe the next wedding is going to be what? Yours? I don't maybe. Okay, that's very cool. I'm going to see your dad and mom this weekend, perhaps.
That takes courage.
It sure does. All right, gentlemen. Until next week.
All right,
Everybody
guys.
be well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Yep.